After studying this module, you shall be able to know how consumers use information about consumers' demand to discover the preferences. You would learn about the axioms of revealed preference approach. You would be able to derive the consumer equilibrium and demand curve and an indifference curve with the help of revealed preference approach. The idea of revealed preference is beyond the idea of indifference curves. It is an improvement over the ordinal utility approach. In the case of indifference curves, there is a notion that we need to have a strong ordering. Samuelson introduced the term revealed preference in 1938. The revealed preference hypothesis is considered to be a major breakthrough in demand theory because it has made it possible to establish the law of demand directly without the use of indifference curves, and all the restrictive assumptions which are there in the case of ordinal utility are done away with. An economic theory of consumption behavior which asserts that the best way to measure a consumer's preference is to observe the purchasing behavior. Revealed preference theory works on the assumption that the consumers have considered a set of alternatives before making a purchase decision. Thus, given a consumer's choice, it is evident that the consumer prefers one particular combination or one particular set, and therefore if beforehand the consumer has applied his mind, then the option that has been revealed is actually showing the preference pattern. So this can be done with the help of revealed preference theory, which tries to understand the preferences of a consumer amongst bundles of goods, of course with a given budget constraint. For instance, if a consumer buys a bundle of good A over a bundle of good B, where both bundles of good A and B are affordable, it is revealed that he or she directly prefers A over B. It is assumed that the consumer's preferences are stable over the observed period of time. That is, that the consumer will not frequently reverse the preference between A and B. Therefore, the behavior is considered to be a reflection of a rational person who would not behave irrationally and go on changing the order of preferences. If this assumption, which is a minimal assumption, is made, then we can understand the behavior of a consumer much better without insisting on strong preferences, as is the case with indifference curves analysis. As a concrete example, if a person chooses 2 apples and 3 bananas over an affordable alternative like 3 apples and 2 bananas, then we can say that the first bundle is revealed to be preferred over the second bundle. It is assumed that the first bundle is good and it is always preferred to the second bundle, and the consumer purchases the second bundle only if the first bundle does not become affordable, that it goes beyond the budget constraint. Only then there would be some change in the preference. Now let us look at the axioms of revealed preference. As we have seen earlier in the case of the ordinal utility approach, now let us also look at the preferences and how the axioms behave, how the axioms are laid out in the case of revealed preference. The preferences in the case of revealed preference theory are not directly observable. We have to discover the people's preferences from their implied behavior. That is, the preferences are implied from their behavior. The basic hypothesis of this theory is that the choice reveals the preference. Some of the assumptions of revealed preference theory are now discussed. The first assumption is rationality. Consumer is assumed to behave rationally in that the consumer prefers bundles of a good that include more quantities of the commodity. Now the second axiom is consistency. If a consumer chooses bundle A in a situation in which bundle B was also available to him, he will not choose B in another situation in which A is also available. That is, if A is greater than B, then B is not strictly preferred to A. Transitivity. If in any particular situation A is greater than B and B is greater than C, then A is greater than C. That is, if bundle A is preferred to bundle B and bundle B is preferred to bundle C, then it implies that bundle A is preferred to bundle C. Revealed preference axiom. The consumer, by choosing a bundle of goods in any one budget situation, reveals his preference for that particular bundle. The chosen bundle is revealed to be preferred amongst all other alternative bundles available under the budget constraint. The chosen bundle maximizes the utility of the consumer. The revealed preference for a particular bundle of goods implies that the maximization of the utility is established. Derivation of the demand curve. Assume that the consumer has a budget line AB and chooses the collection of goods denoted at the point Z, thus revealing his preference for this particular combination of the two goods. Suppose the price of X falls so that the new budget line facing the consumer is AC. We will now show that the new point will include a larger quantity of X. So, if we consider the figure, then what has happened is that at Z there was X1 of commodity X. Now the price of X has fallen, so the budget line has shifted from AB to A prime B prime. And if the budget line has shifted and if the price of X is cheaper than before, then there is no reason why that the consumer preference should go anywhere in the range to the left of Z, that is between A prime and Z prime on the new budget line. None of the preferences would be actually realized, or they would not be even considered. But all the preferences or all the combinations, all the choices that lie to the right of Z, that is from Z up to B prime along ZB prime could be considered. Now if the consumer considers W, then the quantity of X would now be X2, and hence it is clear that under such circumstances, that is when the price of X has fallen, the consumption of X has increased from X1 to X2. However, if we reduce the income such that the consumer who would otherwise have more of real income due to the reduction in the price of X, now if we reduce the income so that the consumer is just able to retain the budget line A prime, B prime, then of course the demand could be anywhere to the right of Z, but for instance at W it would be X2. Now X2 is more than X1, but still there is some additional real income which has not been, for which the consumer has not been compensated. Now if we compensate the consumer for this additional income, then we would expect that the budget line would move outwards to the right. So if the budget line moves outwards to the right, then with the price having fallen already and no further change in the price, then it means that the new budget line has to be parallel to A prime, B prime. So the new budget line is now AC. If the new budget line is AC, then W remains within AC, and therefore W is an inferior point as far as the consumer's utility or satisfaction is concerned. So it is obvious that starting from Z, the consumer would always move to the right of Z, would remain on A prime, B prime as long as the real income is not compensated. But once the real income is compensated, then the consumer would not remain at W, but would go on to some point which is along the new budget line, which is AC. Let us consider this point to be N. At N, the consumption of X is X2. Now, this seems familiar. In the case of the ordinal utility analysis also, we considered the price effect, and the price effect is measured in terms of substitution effect and income effect. In a similar manner over here, what we can see is when price alone changes and income does not change, according to revealed preference, the consumer has moved from Z to W, and the consumption of X has increased from X1 to X2. On the other hand, if the income is compensated and the consumer moves to a better budget line, which is AC, then the consumption would increase and the total welfare or the utility or satisfaction of the consumer would increase, and the consumer would find himself at point N. At point N, the consumption of commodity X is X3. So now let us consider the total impact. The total impact can be divided as the price effect being from X1 to X3, and it is split into X1 to X2, which is the substitution effect when price alone changes, and from X2 to X3 when income alone changes and price remains constant. So therefore, we have been able to establish consumer equilibrium, we have been able to establish the price effect, substitution and income effect, even without a indifference curve. Now, let us look at the revealed preference theory for deriving an indifference curve. In this case, in the earlier case, we have been able to derive the relationship between price and quantity demanded. Therefore, in effect, we have derived a demand curve without the help of an indifference curve. Now, let us see how we could derive the indifference curve with the help of the revealed preference analysis. The prices are given and are consistent. The taxes do not change over time, and the consumer is rational and prefers more over less. These are the ordinary assumptions of revealed preference. Now, let us derive the revealed preference curves. Although there is no need for establishing the law of demand, indifference curves can be derived with the help of revealed preference hypothesis. The revealed preference permits us to construct an indifference map of the consumer just by observing the behavior at various market prices. Let us assume that the initial budget line of the consumer is AB in the figure and he chooses a point Z. All other points on the budget line and below it denote an inferior points with respect to Z. If we drop a perpendicular through Z, CZ and ZD, all the points on these lines and in the areas defined by them to the right of Z are preferred to Z because they contain more of quantity of at least one of the commodities. The points of goods in the remaining areas, that is below the CZD area and above the budget line, are still not ordered. However, we may rank them in relation to Z by adopting the following procedure. Let the price of X fall so that the new budget line EF passes below Z. Now, in this case, what we can see is in figure 2 that the consumer chooses either point G or a point on the right of G, which is GF for instance. Since these points on EG would imply inconsistency of choice because it is below the original budget line, hence they are inferior to G. Assume that the consumer chooses G. Using transitivity assumption, we can say that Z is preferred to G in the original situation, G is preferred to GBF in the new budget line situation, hence Z is preferred to GBF. In this way, we manage to rank all the points in GBF relative to Z. We may repeat this procedure by drawing budget lines below Z and defining gradually all the points of the lower ignorance zone that are inferior to Z. Similarly, we may rank relative to Z all the points of the upper ignorance zone. For example, we assume that the price of X increases and the new budget line KL passes through Z. The consumer will either stay at Z or choose a point such as U on KL given in figure. Using the rationality assumption, we can say that MUN is greater than U. From the revealed preference principle, U is greater than Z, and from the transitivity postulate, MUN is greater than Z. Thus, we have managed to rank the points in MUN as being preferred to Z. Repeating this procedure, we may gradually narrow down the ignorance zone until we have located the indifference curve within a narrow range as we wish to do. Hence, the revealed preference axioms permit us to derive the indifference curve from the consumer's actual behavior, the actual choice of the consumer. We can just simulate different market situations and try to find out how the consumer would react to these different market situations, and it does not have to be based, or it does not have to presuppose the existence of an indifference curve. However, we could do the reverse. Through the actual behavior and actual choice, which we call revealed preference, given the axioms, we can also derive an indifference curve as we have seen in this case. So therefore, in the case of revealed preference theory, even though we do not have to insist on strong preferences, on the basis of the behavior, the actual behavior of the consumer, we can both derive a demand curve and we can also derive a indifference curve. Now let us look at some of the limitations of the revealed preference theory. It is assumed that preferences remain unchanged while the consumer behavior is observed. This is one of the limitations. Preference is not revealed at all in the sense of the ordinal utility. For instance, if there exists only an apple and an orange is picked, then one cannot definitely say that an orange is the revealed preference to an apple. In the real world, when it is observed that a consumer purchases an orange, it is impossible to say what good or set of goods or behavior or behavioral pattern or options were discarded in favor of the preferred orange. So therefore, there is some ambiguity involved when we try to look at revealed preference theory. However, there is no doubt that it is an improvement over both cardinal utility approach and the ordinal utility approach. Now, let us sum up what we have done. The revealed preference theory is a new approach to consumer behavior and demand theory. The advantage with revealed preference theory is that neither do we need strong preferences nor do we need an indifference curve to actually derive the consumer behavior and demand theory. According to revealed preference theory, the demand for a commodity is revealed by the consumer by actually behaving in a certain manner and expressing the choice. Whatever the consumer expresses as a choice is taken to be a revelation of the preference. Revealed preference theory is based on certain assumptions, but the most important assumption is that of reveal preference itself, where we say that the explicit behavior can be relied upon to understand the preferences of a consumer. We have also seen that the revealed preference theory came about because of the shortcomings of the existing theories, and some of them were difficult to sustain. The utility maximization was a controversial assumption, and the utility function could not be measured with great certainty. Now, if one bundle is chosen when the other could not have been chosen, we say that the first bundle is preferred to the second. Then we saw how it is possible to derive the demand curve without the help of indifference curves. Basically, the argument was that according to revealed preference, the consumer would always move to the right and would prefer more of the commodity whose price has fallen, and accordingly it was possible for us to derive the given relationship, that is price effect is equal to income effect plus substitution effect, but without the help of indifference curves. Finally, we also saw how it is possible to derive an indifference curve with the help of revealed preference when we consider different choice sets, and this was done in the following manner. That is, we consider a space in which it is very evident that the revealed preference would give us a superior position. There are of course certain hazy sets in which it is not clear, but then by iteratively keep changing the budget line, we can always argue to show in comparison to one position how another position could be more preferred, and in this way it was possible for us to derive the indifference curve as well.